things that I spend an awful lot of time doing is helping people achieve clothing that fits their body properly, whether that be stuff that they've bought on the high street that's ready to wear, that we make all modifications to, or whether or not they are trying to make something from scratch. But I find people who are sewing for themselves find it really frustrating when things don't fit them right, because you should be able to make a hand-fitted garment fit you properly. You just need to know how. So I'm going to talk with you through bust darts today and making sure that they are correct and fit your body properly. So the first thing we're going to go over is how to sew the darts right so that they're actually sitting properly on the fabric, and then I will show you just how easy it is to move that dart point to make it fit your body properly. This is your dart marking on your pattern, something I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. We've got our 3 different sizes that are marked on this pattern. So we've got 3 different markings for the dart. So the first thing we're going to do is establish that this is the end point for the size that I have cut out. I've cut out along the 24 line, so I'm going to mark the middle point here on my 24. I've also got this marking here and this marking here. The other markings are for the other sizes. They are not what you need. So what we're finding is this 3-point triangle that we've got here, but we need to transfer these markings to our fabric. My pattern piece is all pinned on, I've cut it all out, and now I've got to transfer my markings. There are a few different ways that you can do that. You can do it with a needle and thread and do a tailor's tack. This involves going from one side of the circle to the other through the fabric and leaving a tail. I'm going to do the exact same thing again from one side of the circle to the other and leaving a loop and a tail. And that's all a tailor's tack is. They are very, very simple. It's just this loopy series of threads that I've created on my pattern. What that means is that when I take my pattern piece off, I have got these left here which are marking where the end point is. Now there are a few other ways of doing this. If I take this out, one thing I can do is use a friction pen, provided you have tested this on the fabric you're using to make sure that it does vanish when you apply heat. This is an absolutely fine way of marking your end point on here. So you see that is on my fabric. When I apply heat, that will magically vanish. The final way that I will often mark points like this that need to be transferred through to my fabric is with a pin. I will literally pop it through the fabric. And when I have 2 layers, which is more commonly the case with the dart, I will flip it over and pop another pin the other way through, so I have 2, when I open the 2 up, I have 2 darts, one on either side. Now this end, you can use whatever method you're using to transfer these this marking here, use that to transfer these. I don't tend to find that that's necessary. All I do is a little snip following those lines there. We're just trying to get the width here. And as long as your snips are less than your seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimetres, you're going to be absolutely fine. That snip is going to be in your seam allowance, so it's nothing to worry about. So once I've got these 3 points marked, I am ready to take my pattern piece off and start folding it. So I have my 2 snips here. I've also got a pin at this end, and I'm going to fold this down so that it's right sides together. And what I am aiming for is for my pin to be on the fold that I've created and my 2 snips to be lying on top of each other. So the 2 snips are sat on top of each other and my pin here is on the fold. I'm then going to pin this in to hold this in position. Now when it comes to sewing darts, we are going to be always stitching from our raw edge to our fold point. This is the apex of your bust, so it's really important that we make sure that we get that nice and sharp. Therefore ending there is better with the method I'm going to show you. Now if you're not confident with sewing in a straight line without any sort of guide marks. Draw yourself a line. We're working on the inside of our fabric, so you can grab yourself a ruler and join up the points. So I'm literally going from my snips here all the way along to my folded edge here, and I can create a line. I'm using my friction pen again. You could use a pencil because it's on the inside. You could also use some chalk. The choice is yours. I'm just trying to get a nice line that you can then stitch along to get to here. So I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to do a little reverse here to secure myself on at this raw edge. I'm going to follow this line and I'm going to stop just before I get to this pin. Now I'm going to remove this pin before I go to the machine because otherwise they tend to get in the way and get a bit stuck. I'm going to transfer it to a pin on top that's still pointing at this edge here. If you've done the marking with a tailor's tack, you'll have some little threads. They're absolutely fine to leave in. You'll be able to remove them later. If you've done it with a friction pen, you should be able to still see that marking there, so you've got it there. But this pin is just the pointing at the same point, just giving me my end point. So I am here at the machine. I'm starting at my raw edge on my line, and then I'm going to work my way down. Do a little reverse here. And then I'm going to stop. So I'm really close to my end point. And then what I'm going to do is go manual. So I can either use the wheel on the side of my machine, or I've got a button here that will just go needle up, needle down. What I'm aiming to do is get really close to that folded edge, getting myself a nice level of control. And now I am on my pin. I'm at my final point, and I'm also the closest I can get to my end point here. So you can see I've had nice control. I've not overshot it, and I'm also not doing reverse. I'm going to pull it off at this point. Cut myself some longish threads, and then instead of doing a reverse, I'm going to tie 3 knots. So 1. They're just standard knots that you'd use to tie your shoes, but there's 3 of them on the spot, and it's going to make it really nice and secure. So there are my 3 knots. I'm going to cut these off now, leaving about 1 centimetre or 3/8 remaining, and that will stay in inside my garment. So my dart is now all sewn, but it needs pressing. At the moment, we've got this really bouncy, not very accurate looking edge from the outside, but that is nothing that a press isn't going to rectify. But we need to make sure that with a dart like this that goes across the body, we are going to be pressing down. If it was one of the horizontal ones that you'd find going up from the waist, you are pressing towards your centre front or your centre back, depending on if it's on the front. But always pressing towards our centres, or we're pressing down the body. So I will iron that and show you the difference that that's going to make. And there we have it, nicely ironed and pressed, and look at that, it's sitting really beautifully flat. You can imagine with a boob under there, it's going to sit really, really nice. Now, something that you might sometimes find is that when you typically put darts in, you find that they're not pointing at the point of your boob that you would like to. And it's a surprisingly easy alteration that you can make to ensure that your darts are ending in the right place without actually having to change anything here. So what you're going to do is, this is our shoulder point, and this should be approximately where our nipple is. Our nipple is about 1 centimetre away from where the end of this dart point is, so it would be about here-ish. Let me mark it for you. So we're looking at a nipple being approximately here. A dart should never end exactly where your nipple is, otherwise you'd end up with Madonna boobs, which we're not aiming for in this circumstance. So we're going to measure from our shoulder down to our nipple, and then we're going to do the same thing on ourselves. So we're going to take our tape measure, we're going to place it at the centre point on our shoulder seam in whatever we are wearing, and then we're going to pull the tape measure down until we get to the approximate location of where our nipple is on ourself. Mine is sitting at 30. So I will take that measurement now and translate that over to the pattern. So we'll get our pattern in, and we're going to measure down the 30 centimetres that my bust is suggesting that it should be. I'm going to mark that point. And you see I've stayed in line with this here. You could measure from the side, but I wouldn't get too worried about manoeuvring things inwards. It's just down that tends to be the big noticeable difference. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that as this point. I'm going to draw myself some lines matching up with these points on the edge here. So we're just going to draw a line then like this, and a line in like this, and that's my new dart. And it really is as simple as that to move that dart, and it will make a big difference to how this fits you. So you can move that down. I've moved that down by the looks of things a good inch. Yeah, closer to 1.5 inches. It's about 1.25 inches I've moved that down. About 3.5 centimetres. And that really is going to make a difference in how the top feels and how the top fits. So that adjustment is really nice and easy to do. And then I would mark and stitch my dart just how I've shown you, and you will end up with the most beautiful finish over your bust. So I hope those little tips and tricks are going to help you out going forward with your sewing. If you're not feeling confident about moving that bust point, do yourself up a little toile. I use old duvet covers or sometimes some cheap fabric or calico, whatever it may be, just to test run these things against my body before I go in with the fabric that I want to make something in. So just give it a try.